Okay, this is Emma Pitt, and this is just for the purpose of the video. I'm currently doing a session with a small group of people about the human dimensions of change. This morning we looked at the psychology, and we're now ready to have a look and try and apply that knowledge apply it to a model. So this is the first model we're going to look at. This model describes 3 areas within change. It's called the learning model actually. If you can see that with 3 areas here, we've got the comfort zone, the discomfort and the panic. I'm going to tell you a little story which I'm hoping might be able to support you in understanding this a bit further. Let me tell you about Margaret and David. Margaret and David lived in Cambridge. They'd lived in the same house for about 30 years. And during that 30 years, they'd spent a long time loving their garden, designing, creating, and they'd had a new kitchen about 5 or 6 years previous to this happening. They lived in a cul-de-sac, so they'd actually built quite good friendships and quite good relationships with people within their small area. And one day, somebody from the housing association came to visit them and quite unexpectedly explained to them that they'd got plans to demolish this cul-de-sac. You can probably understand some of the concerns and some of the anxieties that they both had. What was interesting is that when I spoke to Margaret a few days later, Margaret clearly had moved out the comfort zone. So being in the comfort zone is where she'd been for 30 years. She was quite comfortable. It was her home. She'd been there, she knew the people around her, and all of a sudden this news had rocked her, and it was so unexpected that what had happened when I spoke to her is that she was now in an area called panic, and some of the questions that she was asking and the concerns that she had showed a huge amount of anxiety, which I think we could all probably understand and appreciate. What was more interesting is that when I spoke to David a bit later that same week, David doesn't appear to actually be in the panic. He didn't appear to really want to talk about what was going to happen. And in a very subtle way, he appeared to be in denial. And he carried on going to work, coming home. He carried on watering the garden as if nothing had happened. And quite interestingly, I felt as if David was still here. Now, the interesting thing about change is that if we're going to understand and appreciate change and the change and what it's going to mean for me, because often that's the question, what does this mean to me? What does it mean? We have to be somewhere else. We have to accept the answers to questions, and we've got to be ready to ask those questions. And over a period of time, what I noticed was that Margaret and David were both coming out of where they were. So with Margaret, she was up here, and with David, he was still here. And over time, they were moving to the discomfort. Now, in the discomfort is where learning happens. And the way we could see that they were in this area is because they started asking questions. They started to try and put some meaning to what that meant for them. So the questions were like, well, what's going to happen to all my friends? We've built a really good community here. What about my garden? And where are you going to house us? So all these questions came out, and what we began to realise is that Margaret and David started to realise some of the benefits of moving. They obviously had a brand new house that they were going to rehome the local community in. They also realised that they were actually going to move this small cul-de-sac to the same street, so their friends and the local community were still moving together to the same area within Cambridge. Now, they've been there for about 8 years, and actually they're in their 70s, and I would say that both of them now are in the comfort zone. They've been there quite a while. They've designed a new garden, and they're quite happy where they are, in the knowledge that their friends are still local and nearby. Now, interestingly enough, when we look at organisations, when you look at organisational change, sometimes it's unexpected, but we are able to plan and we're able to be aware of the impact that change has on people and how to manage people's expectations of change. So thinking about this model, has anybody got any suggestions of perhaps, or sorry, not suggestions, any ideas of how a change has happened in their life and where they went? Were they in the comfort and where did they move to? Has anybody got any examples?
I think this could be an example.